All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving deep into a mystery that's literally been hiding for 2,000 years. So, let's get right into it. There's this theory making waves, coming from the YouTube channel Ministry Revealed, and the idea is pretty wild. What if the Gospel of John isn't just a story about the past? What if it's actually a hidden code, a secret map to the future, just sitting there, waiting to be found?
Okay, so the main idea, the real engine behind this whole thing, is something they call a prophetic fractal. Think about it like this. What if certain historical events aren't one and done? What if they're patterns, like fractals in math, that just keep repeating? And what if those ancient patterns are actually a blueprint for our future? That's the big idea we're exploring.
Now, before we can even start to see this fractal, you kind of have to hit the reset button on what you might already know about biblical prophecy. Because this theory, it introduces a totally different timeline, a new framework. And honestly, it's the key that supposedly unlocks this whole mystery. You know, a lot of end times interpretations focus on one 7-year period, often called the tribulation, right? Well, this theory completely changes that. It says, nope, it's not 7 years, it's 14. It doubles it. And it splits that 14-year period into two chunks. A 7-year period of what they call seals, and then another 7 years of trumpets. And yeah, those are the judgments you read about in the book of Revelation.
So, with this longer 14-year timeline, you get a completely new roadmap for how things are supposed to unfold. It all kicks off with a 40-day warning period. Then you get the first 7-year block, the seals. After that, the second 7-year block, the trumpets. And it all leads up to this final event called the Jubilee, which is this idea of a huge final reset or restoration. And you've got to remember this structure because it's the foundation for everything that comes next.
Okay, so that's the framework, a 14-year timeline. But where's the proof, right? Well, according to this theory, the evidence, the key that unlocks the whole code, is hidden inside 3 specific Jewish feasts, the ones that require an offering. So the theory really focuses on these 3 big festivals. First, you've got the Feast of Unleavened Bread. That's a 7-day thing, connected to Passover. Then there's the Feast of Weeks, which is just 1 day. And finally, the Feast of Tabernacles, another 7-day festival. The super important thing to know is that normally they happen in that exact order, every single year.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting. This is the big twist. The theory hinges on one little verse in the Gospel of John, where Jesus talks about a harvest coming 4 months early. They take this as a massive clue, a prophetic signal to shuffle the order of the feasts. So they take that 1-day Feast of Weeks, the one that's supposed to be in the middle, and they move it right to the front of the line. And just like that, you get a brand new prophetic pattern. 1 day, then 7 days, then 7 days. A 1-7-7 pattern.
And this is the moment where everything supposedly clicks into place. This new 1-7-7 pattern, well, the theory claims it maps perfectly, and I mean perfectly, onto 3 chapters in the Gospel of John, one right after the other.
So let's look at the evidence. We start with John chapter 5. In that chapter, it just mentions a feast of the Jews, but it never actually says which one. Well, the theory says, aha, that's it. That unnamed feast is our reordered Feast of Weeks. It's the one in our 1-7-7 pattern.
Then we move right along to the very next chapter, John chapter 6. And this time, there's no mystery. The text flat out says it's Passover. And what do you know? Passover is connected to a 7-day feast. It fits perfectly as the first 7 in the sequence.
And to complete the puzzle, you go to the next chapter, John 7. And boom, it explicitly names the Feast of Tabernacles, another 7-day feast. So there you have it. The sequence is complete. An unnamed feast, then Passover, then Tabernacles. John 5, 6, and 7. It's a 1-7-7 pattern, laid out perfectly in order.
So this is the core of the whole theory, the actual prophetic fractal map. John chapter 5 and its unnamed feast, that represents the 40-day warning period at the start of the 14 years. John chapter 6 with Passover, that maps to the first 7-year period, the seals. And John chapter 7 with Tabernacles, that lines up with the final 7 years, the trumpets. It's a story, yes, but according to this view, it's also a precise, coded timeline for the future.
And if you buy into this, then suddenly nothing in these chapters is just a random detail. Every little thing becomes a potential clue. For instance, in chapter 6, there's a mention of a great multitude of people. Well, the theory says that's not just a crowd, it's a prophetic picture of the huge number of people who will be saved during that first 7-year period.
everything is part of the code.
Okay, so we've laid out this really intricate, complex theory. But you might be asking, so what? Why does this even matter? Why put all this together?
Well, for the people who believe this, it's way more than just a clever Bible study. They see this as a genuine mystery, a code that was intentionally locked away, and it was meant to be figured out right now, in our generation, in what they believe is the time of the end. It's a way of saying that this ancient book is speaking directly to us, today, right now.
And the whole idea is that these patterns were hidden, sure, but they were hidden in plain sight. They weren't meant to be discovered until the right time, and only by the people who were really searching. It's kind of like that Bible story where only the stranger came back to give thanks. The suggestion is that not everyone is meant to get this. So, whether you're convinced or not, what this really shows is a completely different way of looking at these ancient texts. Not as dusty old history books, but as living, dynamic, coded messages. Messages that some people believe are just sitting there, waiting for someone with the right key to unlock them. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other patterns, what other codes might be hiding in plain sight, just waiting to be seen?